Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a midweek edition of 5 Minutes with Phil. It is Wednesday. We're halfway there through the work week, and I hope your week has been going good for you. It's great to see you, and thanks for giving me a chance to unpack God's Word one more time on 5 Minutes with Phil. And today we are on a chapter in the book of Psalms that deals with how we are to manage sin in our lives when we fail, when we mess up. And specifically, I want to talk about the effects of, for example, we sin and we kind of keep it to ourselves. We really don't deal with it. We just kind of, it's there, and it's like the elephant in the room spiritually in our lives, and we don't really do much with it. What are the effects of kind of keeping our sin unconfessed or keeping our sin to ourselves? Well, David in Psalm 32, he deals with this, and I want to read the first 5 verses to you so we can kind of get a better look as to what we can learn here. Look at this. It says this, I'm starting in verse 1. Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. All right, a lot to unpack there. David is talking about what happens when we kind of keep our sin to ourselves and we don't deal with it. And I think there's nothing more that the enemy of our souls would love us to do than not just to sin, but to leave it, just to leave it there and not confess it to the Lord, for it to remain in our hearts and in our lives. Because what happens when we sin and when we choose not to deal with it, then we find ourselves spiritually hurt, I think emotionally hurt, maybe even mentally hurt. Sin has that kind of an effect on us when we don't deal with it properly. And that's a big deal. And David describes things like when my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. Day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped. I mean, David is actually talking about some very real consequences to keeping his sin buried. But then he shares that there is a huge difference when he confessed his sin to the Lord. And I think there's a lot of merit to all of us today, every day, kind of doing a little spiritual inventory of our lives. And if there's some sin there, if there's some stuff in our lives that doesn't belong, don't treasure it. Don't hide it. You can't hide it from God anyway. Don't stuff it in your spirit and in your life, because that's just going to eat away at you. Confess it to the Lord. Confess it to the Lord. And I love verse 5. It says, Then I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Here's the deal. When God forgives us, he doesn't only take away the penalty of my sin, but he also takes away the guilt and the remorse and the shame of my sin. So today, you know what? All of us, let's not stuff our sin and try to hide it in some shelf, thinking that it'll just go away. Let's confess it to the Lord. And that's when we'll see the real relief that God has for us. Okay? Do that today. I love you. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you again later. Bye-bye.